Hello, everybody. Welcome to SIG Azure for Wednesday, October 18th, 2017. I'm your moderator, Jay Singer-Dumars. I am the Kubernetes ambassador for Microsoft. And we have a light meeting today, so we may not even get through the agenda. But if you want to see the agenda after the fact and notes, it's available at bit.ly/sig-azure. So, yeah, one thing we were just talking about before the recording started was documentation specific to Azure permissions model and how do we provision least privileged clusters. So, Rob, you had some questions there. You do have a few people on the call here that might be able to contribute that as well. So.
Well, yeah. So first, I was wondering if about the SIG Azure model, and obviously we do have that ability. So then the next question is, if anyone has any documentation regarding to what kind of privileges are needed to do what type of functions, and if they do, maybe kicking off an effort to get all that consolidated into some form of documentation, which would kind of flow nicely into docs for Azure when it does the out of cloud provider move, or out of tree provider move.
Yeah, so has anybody on the call actually done any documentation or had experience spinning up least privileged clusters? Okay, well that sounds like we'll have to table that for now. But I've put a big book note in that, and actually I'm going to put in the work in progress section, TBD docs for privilege model in Azure plus cloud provider, because there's going to be plenty of people who are going to be very interested in that, especially as we get Key Vault integration, and even more so when we get KMS involved, because once Key Vault can be implemented for all of the secrets and whatnot in the cluster, that will be a pretty big deal. So
I've seen kind of with some of the others, it gets to be a bit hairy. There's some permissions that kind of get to be obvious, and you start saying, well, different roles and functionalities, and it can be an interesting mess.
Yeah, our back always feels like on the edge of disaster at all times. Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Cool. So unfortunately, Cal is not here to talk about the Key Vault integration, but he did message me privately earlier in the week. Said that it was delayed, but there were some predicates that were done in terms of the ACS engine part. So that is basically teed up to get done, but we don't know exactly what the delivery date on that will be. Cloud provider breakout right now is a little bit stalled. I need to touch base with the team in Beijing and find out what is being done there, and get an update to you all. The work is already sort of spec'd, so if anybody is feeling like digging into that, there's certainly nothing to prevent anybody from doing that, because right now I don't think there's any work happening on the side. So if we spin up some work around that, that would be, I think, really helpful.
So kind of as an update to that, I know I was talking with the team kind of in charge of this, and there's still some issues, especially around storage, that need to be solved. There's certainly not going to be any pressure for 1.9 to be moving anything out of tree.
Yeah, right.
They're kind of looking at probably GCE biting the bullet and being the first to try to move out as a example, and that is obviously ongoing. And as I said, there's still stuff that needs to be resolved on how to even do this stuff out of tree.
Yeah, so I feel like Siddhartha was the guy who sort of kicked this off and then got the ball rolling. He's started his own company now, and he's sort of off doing other things. And I think that it's one of those things with open source. You get somebody who's sort of a champion of something, and they run with it. And then if they drop the ball, it's sort of like which is fine. I mean, they shouldn't have to carry it forward.
Well, actually, there is a meeting later today with the group that's the working group that's kind of managing that. And I've been going to that meeting as well, and that's kind of why I'm saying that there's still unknowns and some issues to be resolved, especially, as I said, around storage. So it is still moving forward. It did get stalled. It is moving forward, but there's and I kind of mentioned this in the last meeting that that they kind of needed to work on updating the status and the message to the rest of at least the cloud providers on what the goals and the strategy is currently. So it is moving forward, and they are just saying, hey, we're not asking anybody to do anything until we have at least one or two in-tree providers that have moved out that can be used as examples. Right. And I know there is a PR for GCE to be doing that, but I don't foresee any big push to push it to everybody move out until they have at least one successful one.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm wondering why I don't have that working group in my calendar.
Well, because it's only, it's kind of, they have basically a mailing list. They don't have anything formal. They just got their own Zoom account.
Okay.
I can put if you want, I can put in the notes, the mailing list.
Yeah, that'd be great.
In.
Yeah, that'd be super helpful. Fantastic. Thank you. Let's see. So, okay. So then, yeah, we'll touch base on that in a couple of weeks, and we'll know a little more then. ACS Engine, I don't know if anybody on the call has an update about what's up with ACS Engine. I do have an update here about conformance testing, if nobody's going to talk about ACS Engine. Okay, ACS Engine not happening. The conformance testing. So as you all may know, the CNCF has been working on essentially creating a conformance program that is a way of saying, your Kubernetes cluster is at least in alignment with the base standards that we ask for in terms of capabilities that one could call it Kubernetes. The reason for this is that what they're trying to avoid is some spurious cloud popping up somewhere and saying, hey, we're cloud Kubernetes, and basically it's a fork or it's some like half done way of doing it just to try and cash in and cash in on the Kubernetes name or whatnot. And so it also allows cloud providers to establish a baseline of functionality. So if I have my company and I have my workloads and I want to be multi-cloud, or I want to easily port my workloads between GKE and Azure, then I can do that. So it's really an assurance to the community as well. So it's protecting Kubernetes, the name, and it's also providing some assurance to customers that your workload should work just fine on a cloud that says that they're conformant. So one of the things that was in the conformance test was a can I reach the internet test, and that was done via an ICMP ping, which, as you know, if you're in the systems realm, ICMP is probably the least countable protocol that you can expect in any kind of production environment. And Azure, just as a general rule, does not provide ICMP traffic across internal nets. So when when ACS Engine was spinning up a Kubernetes cluster, it was not passing the conformance test on that one test. We basically appealed to CNCF and Sonaboy writers at Heptio, and they said, yeah, that's probably true. That's not actually a valid test. So we'll look at maybe using an HTTP call or something like that to make sure that we're doing it that way as opposed to this. So that test, the ICMP based test, became non-blocking in 1.8.1, and so now Azure is 100% conformant, and we're going to essentially put out a new version of ACS Engine soon and write all the CI/CD testing that allows us to continually ensure that we are compliant, and then we'll work with the CNCF to make sure that is part of their stuff, their repo that they have for that. So that's a nutshell of what's going on there. But Azure is absolutely compliant. The ACS Engine stuff is compliant. Any questions on that?
Sorry, did you mention that? Is this for 1.8 or 1.81 Kubernetes support? Is that what you're highlighting there? Sorry, I came in late. I apologize.
Oh, no worries. So this is the conformance test will pass on 1.8.1.
Okay.
Because that ICMP test is deprecated.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Because I need to do that actually today. Just a quick question is, we still haven't resolved the issue around upgrading an existing like 1.75 cluster to 1.8. It's basically tear down and rebuild, correct?
Right now, that is true.
Because we don't have Juju support or anything like that, right?
Right, and
yeah,
but
it's frustrating. I'm getting a lot of flack from my business about it, right? Because we're basically spinning up another cluster as a temporary one, and then building a new one, and then redirecting everyone over. It's just
it is a pain. You know I mean, I'm sure you've got the messaging totally under control, but that's actually a compelling business case to say that you have enough disaster recovery fungibility on your workloads that you can completely tear down your production environment and restart it somewhere else. That's at least a compelling recovery case.
Yeah, I mean, because we're just using persistent volumes, right?
Oh, that makes it.
We just rehook them up and just point them as part of. So what we've done is we've sort of butchered the charts, right, for Helm. So when we fire up the apps again, it just looks at those existing storage.
Yeah, that's definitely upgrades are top of mind for us. Having the ability to spin up easily managed clusters is always like that is the sort of the next challenge. You know, it used to be installers, and now it's life cycle around the cluster, and that is important.
No, I appreciate it. I'm going to probably be a nagging person on the SIG Azure on that, because it's one that hits me every single time there's a change.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's we need that feedback. That is absolutely valuable.
Okay. Yeah, right now it's manageable because we only have really one predominant cluster. But as we go into new geo locations, we're going to spin up separate clusters because of data sovereignty and all those sort of issues, right? We'll have them sitting in different geographical locations. And then we're then expanding the issue of trying to upgrade now. Instead of one cluster managed, we've got 3 to upgrade, right?
Yeah, that is, having come from a background in managing ops like that that's very frustrating.
Yeah, well, I've scripted everything right. I can shut the whole resource group down and then rebuild everything into the resource group and just pull everything out of the Azure Vault and everything like that. So I've got all that working.
That's awesome. Good work. You know what?
It was painful, but yeah, got it.
Well, actually, to that extent, I would love to have you do a demo sometime of sort of what your setup is.
Sure.
I think that would be really, really fascinating.
Happy to. Yeah, some of the, I've got to do a PR back on the Azure Kubernetes Secrets Vault because some of that wasn't correct. And the other one that I hit was admin Windows. So I'm running a hybrid cluster, both Windows nodes and Linux nodes, because we have to support legacy .NET full applications as well as our more core .NET Core and other Go-based applications. So we have to, there's a bit of a pain there. Like I pretty much now know the node selector pretty extensively, right? Because otherwise it tries to throw Linux-based containers onto Windows nodes and they fail, of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to disrupt.
No, this is what I'm hoping that this SIG will also promote, is for people to share real life stories about how they implement and some of the challenges, because that's where we're going to make this product better and how we're going to make it more usable.
Yeah, we had a security review yesterday with our security ITG and security team yesterday at the whole how we set up our cluster. And one of the big things that we probably, and I haven't seen a lot of information about it, like they use forensic tools like NCase and stuff like that. And getting integration into the Kubernetes cluster is one that we're working with them right now. So we should hopefully uncover some good things around all the security type tools that they want to do, because they traditionally looked at just VMs and they put everything on the VMs, right?
Yeah.
Now they're working in this model. It's a little bit different for them.
Yeah, one thing I would point them to is that the CIS standards around Kubernetes seem pretty sane and good. And that gives a practical framework for working against. And I believe somebody came up with a scanning tool that actually will tell you what things in the CIS hardening standards are not present. So I would highly recommend looking at that.
Excellent. I'm just digging that up now.
Yeah.
Actually. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's actually that's one of those things that is a huge hallmark of when you're getting into the enterprise realm. And I think this was it's surprising that there wasn't a bigger deal made about this for Kubernetes, because if you have a CIS hardening standard around it, then it basically means that enterprises of any size can adopt the technology and have a audit framework. Because until that's in place, you have no way of knowing what is or isn't compliant.
So they have their free benchmark PDFs. Is there anything more detailed than that?
That's a good place to start. I think that's pretty much the most of it, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Another recommendation I have is there's a product called TwistLock. That's a in-cluster container scanner, and essentially is a way of determining if your base image that you're building containers from has any vulnerabilities in it. It also allows you to do a scanning pass before anything goes through your CI/CD pipeline. So essentially, you can have it say that if it doesn't pass, a check, like for some reason somebody has turned on SSH in a container or done something that you don't permit, it will actually send a hook back to your CI/CD engine and stop the deployment. So there's
nice.
It's a really cool tool.
We did a customize with CI. Our CI/CD is done with Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually do spin up a slave and do the whole deployment and everything, testing on that through Jenkins. And then we tear it down. We have it for Linux running well now, but Windows, we're still working on some of the, because we need to get kubectl onto the slave and onto the Windows and build all that fun stuff.
Yeah, that's a little more challenging for sure.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's exciting. All right. Well, then let's go through. We'll wrap up the agenda here. The no PRs in flight, release updates. 1.9 release team is formed. So our release lead this time around is Anthony Yeff from Google. Release lead backup is myself. So I'll still be deep in the trenches of 1.9. 1.8.2 we're expecting hopefully this week. I anticipate maybe Thursday. Tomorrow is a possibility. And actually, you know what? If I haven't heard anything about it yet, I bet it's not going to happen tomorrow. It may be next week. So any other announcements, things you want to cover before we adjourn? All right. I appreciate all of your time so much. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day, rest of your weekend, a good weekend.
You too.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, man.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.